she did and whispered, "That's Willy Wonka."
Have you ever wondered how Willy Wonka would build a car that tastes like a storybook? What if I told you the Wonkamobile hides inventions that read like confectionery engineering? Today we're counting down 20 weird facts about Willy Wonka's Wonkamobile. Buckle up. Number 20. Confectionery machinery repurposed. Willy Wonka secretly built the Wonkamobile from repurposed confectionery machinery, a choice that pleased chocolatiers and puzzled gearheads alike. The factory's giant enrobers, caramel pulpers, and conveyor motors were adapted into propulsion and accessories, creating a vehicle that smelled faintly of toffee even after long drives. Wonka justified the design by insisting that candy equipment matched the rhythm of the car's needs: slow, constant torque for gentle cruising and sudden bursts for theatrical exits. This hybrid engineering required sugar-grade lubricants and daily cleanings to prevent crystallization in warm weather, turning routine maintenance into a pastry chef's ritual. Technicians had to wear flour-dusted coveralls and use pastry brushes where mechanics would normally use rags, and the service manuals were half engineering diagrams, half recipes. Insurance underwriters called it a circus. Museum curators called it a masterpiece. Because the parts were familiar to factory staff, repairs could be improvised during production runs, meaning the Wonkamobile could be fixed between batches of fudge. The result was a car that behaved less like a machine and more like a large, obedient confection, whose quirks tasted strangely comforting to anyone who worked on it. Children claimed it purred like a sugar coma after midnight, softly. Number 19. Paint that changes with a touch. The Wonkamobile's finish used a confectioner's iridescence that reacted to human touch in oddly specific ways, a fact that delighted carnivals and unnerved paint restorers. Wonka insisted the paint formula include crushed sugar glass, mica flakes, and a smidgen of edible glitter, creating a pearlescent surface that changed subtly under warmth and humidity. When curious hands left microscopic residues, the refractive index shifted just enough to alter hue, making panels lean toward mint, lemon, or violet depending on who touched them. Chemists later discovered trace compounds from Wonka's workshop, natural oils and flavor esters, interacting with the mica to produce the effect, and the recipe became proprietary. The finish smelled faintly of peppermint without ever losing its sheen, which raised preservation challenges for museums trying to stop the scent from slowly fading. Restorers learned to avoid conventional solvents. Instead, they used distilled floral mists to clean the surface, or allowed gentle bakery steam to lift grime without dulling the luster. Collectors argued about authenticity. Was a panel more original if it reflected a childhood touch, or if it displayed factory-perfect uniformity? The debate made the Wonkamobile less an object and more a living diary of hands and places it had visited, forever. Number 18. The pneumatic orchestra. Beneath its candy-striped skin, the Wonkamobile hid a pneumatic orchestra that powered whimsical secondary systems and performed mobile soundtracks on demand. Rather than a conventional horn, Wonka installed tuned candy canister bellows that could play chords and jaunty fanfares whenever the car entered a new neighborhood. Those bellows also operated licorice windshield wipers that snapped with a percussive rhythm, gumdrop suspension bladders that hissed in sympathetic harmony over speed bumps, and a marzipan compressor that smoothed engine vibrations like a metronome. The pneumatic network was driven by a central sugar-pumped blower, giving it a warm, breathy timbre. Passengers reported that the car's music seemed to respond to mood. It brightened into syncopated polkas when children laughed and softened to lullabies during twilight rides. Sound engineers who studied the recordings were baffled by the organic quality, attributing it to the interaction of compressed, flavored vapors and tuned metal canisters. The effect was less about volume and more about character, making every trip feel like a scene in a musical whose score came from the vehicle itself, and smelled faintly cinnamon. Number 17. The Hsarinbmow Idea Machine. Inside the steering column. Wonka hid a mechanical idea generator he called the Hsarinbmow, a playful name derived from a backward factory memo phrase. The device combined clockwork, a tiny fortune automaton, and a carousel of stamped prompt cards that nudged the car into spontaneous behaviors. When the key turned, a metal drum advanced, and a card popped up with a direction like "turn left" for laughter or "pause" for peppermint. And the Wonkamobile executed a coordinated micro-action. The prompts were physical and swappable, so Wonka could insert seasonal decks for holidays or experimental cards for factory tests, changing the car's temperament overnight. Mechanics described the results as unpredictable. Subtle steering nudges, orchestrated bellows, brief mist puffs timed to pedestrian reactions, and other theatrical flourishes that made ordinary drives feel like skits. The Hsarinbmow prioritized delight over efficiency. It interfered with routine navigation, yet created memorable moments that passengers retold at dinners and fairs. Original prompt cards, found in attics and market stalls, now fetch high sums, because each carries a tiny story from a ride of Wonka's inventive mischief. Number 16. Evaporative flavor, cooling and microclimates. One of the Wonkamobile's strange systems created microclimates by evaporating flavored mists from hidden reservoirs instead of using conventional air conditioning. When interior temperatures rose, tiny nozzles released sugared vapor mint, orange or violet, which absorbed heat as it evaporated while perfuming the cabin. The food. Grade mists normally left no residue, but an overflood could leave a faint crystalline bloom on upholstery edges. Wonka treated the cooling as both engineering and theater. Seasonal scent sequences would shift during drives, changing from citrus for daytime errands to lavender lilac for evening promenades. The system allowed localized climate zones within the cabin, so a child in the back could enjoy a cool peppermint breeze, while an adult near the dash felt warm cinnamon comfort. Technicians controlled the effect with analog valves and flavor cartridges that they swapped like spice jars, and the maintenance checklist read like a pantry inventory. Conservationists noted the mists could attract insects outdoors, so Wonka added filters and brief ozone bursts to discourage pollinators. Passengers often compared rides to walking through scented storybooks. Number 15. The Butterscotch Buoyancy Tanks. The Wonkamobile used hidden butterscotch buoyancy tanks beneath its chassis, a whimsical engineering trick inspired by the accidental uplifting qualities of an experimental candy batch. Wonka discovered that when butterscotch syrup was aerated with his proprietary fizz-reactive crystals, it produced a semi-rigid foam capable of momentarily reducing the vehicle's effective weight. He installed 4 elongated tanks that expanded and contracted like pastry lungs, giving the Wonkamobile subtle bounce over uneven terrain and an uncanny gliding sensation during slow turns. Visitors often described the motion as sailing on custard clouds, which amused Wonka enough to file a tongue-in-cheek patent. When the tanks inflated fully, they dampened road noise, making the car unusually quiet, almost theatrical in its calmness. But the system required delicate balancing. Over-aeration made the suspension overly buoyant, causing the car to bob at stoplights, while under mixing left the foam dense and unresponsive. Factory technicians kept a daily tasting ritual, tiny dabs sampled for sweetness and stability to monitor consistency. Preservation teams later struggled to recreate the foam's texture for museum restorations. As Wonka's exact recipe vanished with him, the tanks remain an emblem of his boundary-defying blend of culinary playfulness and mechanical daring. Number 14. The Jelly Ribbon Power Harness. Instead of traditional wiring, the Wonkamobile used a braided harness made of flexible jelly ribbons infused with conductive edible silver. Wonka developed the innovation after realizing candy cords were easier to snake through tight spaces and resisted cracking under theatrical temperature swings inside the factory. When energized, the ribbons shimmered faintly, glowing in soft pastel pulses that matched signal intensity. This made troubleshooting a visual delight. Mechanics simply followed the brightest jelly pulse to locate faults. The harness allowed graceful curves rather than harsh angles, contributing to the Wonkamobile's organic vibe, as if nerves replaced cables. But the system required rigorous humidity control. If moisture levels rose too high, the jelly absorbed ambient vapor and swelled, slowing electrical response times. Too dry, and the ribbons stiffened, losing their characteristic bend. Wonka countered this by embedding microhumidifiers that whispered tiny sighs of flavored mist to keep conditions perfect. Engineers marveled that the candy-based wiring performed comparably to conventional looms and occasionally outlasted them. Modern restorers struggle to duplicate the subtle elasticity because the original blend included a rare gum resin no longer propagated. Without it, replicas lack the silky flexibility that made the jelly harness iconic. Number 13. The pudding-powered resonance frame. The Wonkamobile's frame incorporated a pudding-based resonance matrix designed to absorb vibration and convert it into gentle harmonic tremors, giving passengers a sensation Wonka dubbed pudding smooth. Instead of typical vibration dampers, he embedded pudding pocket sealed gelatinous capsules tuned to different frequencies throughout the structural rails. When the vehicle encountered bumps, each capsule quivered in a controlled pattern, dispersing shock waves like musical notes absorbed by soft dessert. The effect enchanted riders, who felt cradled rather than jolted. Engineers examining the frame noted that the gelatin capsules behaved like liquid mass dampers, though surprisingly effective for such a whimsical medium. The trick lay in varying the viscosity. Firmer pockets absorbed sharp impacts, while looser mixtures captured long, rolling vibrations. Temperature played a crucial role. Warm days softened the capsules, creating a swaying cushion, while cooler nights tightened the feel, adding gentle resonance beneath one's feet. Over time, capsules needed retuning, a process Wonka insisted remain a secret ritual involving flavor tests, metal tapping, and rhythmic stirring. Attempts to reproduce the system without Wonka's intuition resulted in unstable frames or over-sticky mixtures. The resonance matrix remains one of his most baffling achievements. Number 12. The ever-echoing peppermint horn. Rather than a conventional horn, Wonka equipped the Wonkamobile with an ever-echoing peppermint horn, a spiraled instrument that produced harmonized echoes long after the initial blast. Using peppermint vapor channels and curved resonance pedals, the horn expelled notes that split into layered overtones, drifting behind the vehicle like candy-scented ribbons. The sound was playful, yet commanding, neither alarming nor ignorable. Pedestrians often turned to look, not because of volume, but because the echoes felt strangely melodic, lingering like a tune half remembered. The horn's internal chamber included rotating peppermint paddles that slightly altered pitch with every press, ensuring no two honks were identical. This spontaneity delighted Wonka but frustrated city officials attempting to classify it under noise regulations. Some towns permitted its use only during festivals, while others embraced it as mobile street music. Maintenance was unusually culinary. The peppermint paddles needed periodic glazing to retain crispness, and the vapor ducts required flushing with warm syrup to prevent crystallization. If neglected, the horn produced flat, uninspired tones, which Wonka considered musical heartbreak. Collectors say a perfectly tuned horn still fills a street with whimsical echoes that feel almost nostalgic. Number 11. The Memory Meringue Dashboard. The Wonkamobile's dashboard was lined with a responsive memory meringue, a tactile surface that recorded and replayed impressions left by those who touched it. The foam-like material, created from crystallized sugar proteins whipped with conductive air, reacted to fingertip pressure by forming temporary indentations that shimmered before fading. Each imprint activated microsensors beneath the meringue, triggering mood-based interior effects, such as shifting cabin colors or soft musical cues. Wonka invented it after experimenting with emotional feedback confections, believing a car should reflect its passengers' curiosity. The dashboard carried a subtle personality. Hesitant touches produced calming blues, confident presses triggered playful oranges, and rhythmic tapping summoned gentle percussion from the pneumatic orchestra. The meringue never melted under sunlight, thanks to a protective lacquer infused with powdered frost flowers, a rare botanical said to resist heat. However, environmental stability remained tricky. Too much heat softened the meringue, making impressions last too long. Too much cold hardened it into brittle sugar glass. Restorers later struggled to maintain the ideal state because the original conductive air blend was nearly impossible to replicate. A functioning memory meringue panel today is considered confectionery technology at its most magical. Number 10. The Cocoa Combustion Starter Ritual. The Wonkamobile's ignition sequence relied on a cocoa combustion ritual that blurred the line between mechanical procedure and culinary ceremony. Before the engine could turn over, a miniature boiler infused with dark cacao nibs had to reach a precise aromatic bloom, releasing vapor through a copper coil that activated a flavor-reactive starter plate. The process created a low, warm rumble that resembled a pot of chocolate just beginning to simmer. The combustion chamber itself was coated with a thin crystalline glaze derived from roasted cocoa shells, which stabilized temperature fluctuations and allowed the starter to ignite smoothly even in cold weather. Drivers learned to interpret fragrance as feedback. A too-bitter aroma signaled underheating, while an overly sweet scent suggested a clogged vapor filter. The ritual became an entertainment feature during public demonstrations, drawing crowds who watched the boiler glow amber through a small porthole on the dash. Wonka insisted the process improved driver anticipation, creating a sense of journey before motion even began. Critics questioned the practicality, but fans defended the tradition as part of the Wonkamobile's charm. Today, reproductions struggle to mimic the original aroma curve because Wonka used a rare hybrid cacao no longer cultivated. Number 9. The Rainbow Torque Converter. Hidden beneath the candy-like exterior, the Wonkamobile used a rainbow torque converter that modulated power delivery through layered candy-dyed fluids, each responding differently to rotational force. Rather than a single viscous medium, Wonka blended 6 distinct syrups, each tuned to thicken at specific vibration ranges, creating a swirling torque profile that changed color as the car accelerated. The converter's transparent housing allowed observers to see the fluid stratify under strain, merging into a ribbon-like helix before settling into calm layers at idle. The system provided remarkably smooth transitions, eliminating the lurches common in early automatic designs. But the converter demanded vigilant care. The flavored syrups gradually separated or crystallized, requiring weekly reblending through a heating cycle known as the rainbow roll. If neglected, the colors muddied and the converter produced sluggish, sticky responses that Wonka considered mechanical melancholy. Engineers later hailed the design as an imaginative predecessor to modern multi-phase dampening systems, though none have successfully replicated the reactive beauty of syrup coil shifting hue in real time. Museums struggle to display functioning replicas because environmental lights alter the fluid pigment stability. Number 8. The candy-coated navigation globe. Instead of a steering-mounted map or digital guidance, the Wonkamobile featured a candy-coated navigation globe that predicted routes using dissolving sugar strata. The orb, mounted on a pedestal between the front seats, contained layered sugar sheets infused with aromatic compounds representing directions, terrain, and destination cues. When the engine engaged, warm airflow circulated through the glovebox vents to the globe's internal chamber, slowly melting selected strata based on the vehicle's orientation and proximity to waypoints. Passengers watched as pathways formed thin translucent rivers winding across the globe, indicating the most delight-forward route. Wonka's whimsical term for efficiency blended with experiential pleasure. The system never repeated the same pattern twice, as humidity, scent density, and micro-vibrations altered melt rates. Engineers described it as navigational impressionism. But the globe required strict maintenance. If overexposed to sunlight, sheets fused prematurely. If stored too cold, they resisted melting, leaving travelers directionless. Collectors lament that very few globes survive, intact because their internal sugar now ages like antique parchment, brittle yet fragrant. A well-preserved specimen still releases faint hints of citrus, clove, and meadow mint when warmed. Number 7. The floating fondant footwells. The Wonkamobile's footwells used floating fondant panels suspended over a cushion of aerated marshmallow gas, giving riders the surreal sensation of stepping onto weightless pastry. Each panel was reinforced with a thin caramel lattice for support, yet flexible enough to shift gently underfoot, responding to pressure with a soft, buoyant give. The marshmallow gas circulated through a sealed underfloor chamber, maintained by a quiet flavor stabilizer that kept the gas from losing lift in humid conditions. This created a tactile landscape that subtly changed as passengers moved, never unpredictable, but always playfully alive. However, the system required constant monitoring. If the gas density dropped, panels sagged like deflated cakes. If pressure rose too high, they became overly springy, launching loose objects toward the dashboard. Wonka used scented markers to indicate proper balance, So when the footwells smelled faintly of toasted vanilla, conditions were ideal. Restoration teams discovered that caramel lattices age differently depending on passenger frequency, causing some original panels to curl slightly like well-loved recipe cards. A fully functioning set of fondant footwells remains one of the rarest preserved features of the Wonkamobile. Number 6. The Whipped Weather Bubble Shield. To protect passengers during outdoor excursions, the Wonkamobile could activate a whipped weather bubble shield, a semi-transparent dome synthesized from rapidly expanding aerated cream held in a structural sugar gel membrane. When triggered, jets around the car's perimeter released microbursts of stabilized cream that inflated into a protective bubble strong enough to deflect drizzle, dust, or even light gusts of wind. Rather than a rigid canopy, the bubble flexed elastically, rippling like a soap film, while maintaining structural cohesion. Its fragrance shifted depending on atmospheric conditions, crisp and minty in cold air, warm and vanilla-rich under sunlight. The membrane naturally dissipated after prolonged exposure, leaving behind only a faint, sweet mist. But incorrect activation caused comical failures over churned cream hardened prematurely, creating brittle patches, while under-whipped batches sagged into floppy curtains. Wonka trained operators to listen for the correct "foomph," a soft bloom of sound signaling perfect deployment. Modern engineers consider the shield a marvel of edible aerogel science, though recreations lack the ephemeral sparkle described in eyewitness accounts. Some claim the bubble even refracted light into faint pastel rainbows during dusk. Number 5. The Sugar Steam Sentience Loop. The Wonkamobile contained a mysterious subsystem known as the Sugar Steam Sentience Loop, a feedback circuit that blended aromatic vapor pressure with mechanical rhythm to create what technicians described as near personality drift. Tiny boilers beneath the seats vaporized flavored syrups into calibrated sugar steam pulses that traveled through hollow candy pipes embedded in the frame. As passengers spoke, reacted, laughed, or even shifted weight, their vibrations altered the steam's turbulence pattern, which the loop interpreted as mood signals. This, in turn, influenced how the Wonkamobile adjusted interior lighting, pacing of the pneumatic orchestra, and subtleties in acceleration. Some swore the car leaned into corners warmer when occupants were happy, or hummed deeper when riders felt contemplative. Wonka claimed it wasn't alive merely responsively whimsical, but assistants whispered that during late-night tests, the car occasionally initiated melodies or released unexpected scent changes without any passenger input. The loop required constant recalibration because sugar steam lost nuance as residue built up, dulling its sensitivity. Conservators struggle today because the original calibration schema was never documented. Wonka insisted it only worked with intuition. As a result, surviving systems behave unpredictably, responding to environmental cues with gentle, almost affectionate fluctuations. Number 4. The Caramelized Kinetic Brake Pads. The Wonkamobile used caramelized kinetic brake pads, a bizarre fusion of confectionery chemistry and friction mechanics that baffled engineers yet produced astonishingly smooth deceleration. Wonka coated each brake shoe in a proprietary caramel crust, infused with microcrystals that softened under heat and hardened again as they cooled. During braking, friction warmed the caramel ever so slightly, allowing it to mold itself to the drum with uncanny precision. This created a brake field described as soft as pudding, firm as poetry. The caramel surface emitted a faint toasted aroma under heavy use, which children found enchanting, and which critics feared would attract woodland creatures. Maintenance was equally strange. Technicians had to re-season the pads monthly by applying a warm sugar glaze and letting it cure overnight. If neglected, the caramel hardened unevenly, causing minor brake chatter that manifested as rhythmic, percussive thumps. In rare cases of overheating, the crystals fractured, releasing shimmering dust that looked magical but signaled immediate service was required. Modern replicas attempt to simulate the effect using synthetic polymers, yet none replicate the velvety braking sensation of a fully seasoned caramel system. Some historians say Wonka invented dessert, inspired safety decades before anyone else imagined such a concept. Number 3. The Whispering Taffy Transmission. Inside the Wonkamobile lived the Whispering Taffy Transmission, a gearbox that stretched and recoiled like living candy strands to deliver. Torque without the harsh clunks of typical mechanical shifts. Wonka engineered long, ribbon-like taffy bands reinforced with microfilament sugar threads that acted like elastic gears. As the car accelerated, the taffy tightened, thickened, and hummed softly, creating the famous whispering sound passengers adored. The pitch varied with speed, making the transmission feel like it was singing its way through each gear. Temperature played a crucial role. Warm taffy produced smoother, quieter shifts, while cold taffy stiffened and emitted sharper, crystalline snaps. Drivers learned to read these vocal cues like instrumentation. If the taffy hummed in a wobbly tone, tension was uneven. If it croaked, humidity was too low. Wonka even designed a lacquered warming cradle around the gearbox to maintain optimal candy elasticity. Without proper care, the taffy could overstretch and lose its harmonious voice, turning the whisper into a sluggish murmur. Attempts to recreate the system often fail because the original taffy blend used rare mountain honey with remarkable tensile properties. To this day, the transmission's melodic personality remains unmatched. Number 2. The ever-morphing nougat. Seats. The Wonkamobile's seats were carved from ever-morphing nougat, a confection engineered to adjust firmness, contour, and bounce according to the posture and weight of each passenger. The nougat contained buoyant air pockets suspended in a gelatinous matrix strengthened with almond protein fibers, allowing the seats to subtly reshape themselves in real time. When someone sat, the nougat warmed and softened, flowing microscopically to match the rider's frame, then gently firmed again to create perfect support. Children described it as sitting on a dream with structure. Over time, the seats developed memory lines, faint ripples reflecting past passengers, though these faded after nightly rest cycles triggered by temperature drops. Wonka also infused the nougat with a calming vanilla honey scent that intensified during long drives, making the seats feel emotionally reassuring. However, improper cabin climate caused issues. Too warm, and the seats sagged like melted marshmallow. Too cold, and they stiffened into brittle slabs. Restoration teams face constant challenges because original nougat ages unpredictably, sometimes becoming glossy and glass-like or collapsing into soft foam depending on humidity. Authentic seats are among the hardest Wonkamobile components to maintain in display condition. Number 1. The secret lemon lightning core. At the heart of the Wonkamobile pulsed the fabled lemon lightning core, a volatile energy matrix rumored to be Wonka's most closely guarded invention. The core combined crystallized lemon zest, electrically charged sugar prisms, and a kinetic swirl chamber that produced controlled bursts of citrus ion energy. When activated, the chamber emitted a quick flash of pale yellow light, accompanied by a crisp, electric snap, the signature lightning burst that powered the car's most dramatic surges. The core didn't provide continuous energy. Instead, it delivered brief, potent pulses that boosted acceleration, activated theatrical systems, or reset internal convection mechanisms. Between pulses, the chamber recharged by spinning citrus vapors through a spiraled capacitor coated in powdered zest. The slightest contamination interfered with the reaction, so Wonka sealed the core behind a quadruple-layer candy glass shield only he could open. Assistants rumored that the core reacted emotionally to its environment, glowing brighter during delighted laughter and dimming during nervous silence, though no scientific explanation has ever verified this. Modern technologists cannot reproduce the citrus ion ignition because the sugar prisms required a crystallization method lost with the factory's original climate tunnels. And there you have it, 20 wonderfully weird sugar-soaked secrets hiding inside Willy Wonka's Wonkamobile, a vehicle that never simply drove, but dreamed, sang, shifted, and shimmered like a living confection, stitched together by whimsy and genius. Every mechanism, from the lemon lightning pulses to the marshmallow-lifted footwells, proved that Wonka never built machines for convenience. He built experiences meant to be felt, smelled, tasted, and remembered. If you enjoyed diving into this candy-coated labyrinth of imagination, make sure you tap that like button, drop a comment telling us which fact surprised you most, and subscribe for more deep dives into iconic vehicles from the worlds of film, fantasy, and nostalgia. Until next time, keep your engines curious, your creativity calibrated, and never forget, in the world of Wonka, even a car can have a soul made of sugar and a heart that flickers with lightning.